Hello friends, muggles, whatever. Today I am doing a fangirl video because I want to. We're gonna talk all about Stranger Things, and like, I don't have anywhere to put this, but I bought it. Please appreciate it. I am in love with this show. Okay, so I'm gonna back it up. First of all, I didn't like Stranger Things last year very much, and I have a good reason. It's because I listened to it out loud because my mom was watching it out loud. So, and I know that sounds weird, but it made sense. I'm not going to go into the whole thing. So when I listened to it, I knew most of what was going on, but everything looked different in my mind than it looked on screen when I went to go watch it. It didn't match what I had in my head. Regardless, I was wrong. This show is amazing. If you're watching this, you should have already seen it because I'm just gonna gab. So there are only spoilers in this. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. I promise it's worth your time. Take it from me, I was wrong, yada yada yada. How do you fangirl in a video but also be organized? No idea. First I'm gonna talk about Mike. We see his character is going through a really hard time, as any kid would. He's acting out a little more, and his mom says something about that because he did go through a lot, especially for a kid. I was really glad that they showed that he like acts a little bit different now and that he was changed by the whole thing that happened. Even though it was kind of sad to see that he had more of a chip on his shoulder, because I think that's part of the magic of Stranger Things is you look at it through these kids' eyes. And I think it's so fascinating because it's the first time that a kid is looking at the world as a little darker. They're seeing that it's not all fairies and gumdrops and rainbows. If your dog dies, you don't want to oh, that got dark. If your dog dies, you don't want to go out and buy a dog that looks exactly the same because, you know, it just feels like you're replacing something that you loved. So, totally understood why he was not feeling Max, but it was also really sad. I was like, oh, be nice to her. The fact that Mike called 352 times, is that right? 352? Was so cute. It was like an 80s The Notebook, you know? It was just so sweet, and the fact that 11 heard all those times, and it was so cute. I understand where Hopper's coming from, that he had to, you know, protect her, but it was sad that she heard him all those times and she wasn't able to reply, but it made the reunion sweeter. I'm gonna talk about Steve and Dustin because can we please name a more iconic duo? That's how I feel about this whole show. The logline should just be iconic duos, because I love the pairing of so many of the characters. Oh, this is comic gold, and it's like makes you feel. So I loved their pairing. The hair advice, the girl advice, it was just all so sweet. And even though I don't know that Steve's advice is necessarily compatible with who Dustin is, it's still very sweet to see. I would like to see that relationship evolve a little more next season. They were adorable. Steve has the best character arc I've seen in a really long time for a teenage boy, especially as a secondary character. I feel like that's a good place to go into how Stranger Things does a really fascinating thing of there is no small roles. For example, the science teacher. In the first season, he was like used as this tool and this person that all the kids could go to for advice about science, and he just wants them to learn. I love that the Deford Brothers didn't forget about his character. They brought him into the next season as well. Or even, you know, like the librarian, she wasn't forgotten. Barb wasn't forgotten, even though she's like not a small character. You know what I mean? I think that is something that writers for film and television can really examine and look at, and I think that's probably a reason why people feel so much for some of these characters, is because more things are revealed about them as the time goes on. There's no small role, basically. Nancy and Jonathan, they still talk, even though it's been a year. She still is like, come to this party, like they're not best buddies, but she didn't just like ignore him after everything that happened between them. That being said, I feel bad for Steve because I do like him so much more this season, but I do totally get the whole why they needed to be together. What was it the conspiracy dude said? You got trauma, history, whatever. Like obviously they were gonna end up together. Something that I watched in the After series said that the Deford Brothers wrote Jonathan is the only character who really knows, of the kids, who really knows who he is. And that's like a really interesting lens to use when you're looking at his character, whereas you see Nancy trying to figure out who she is and navigate the waters. So it makes sense that it takes her some time to figure out if she wants to be with Jonathan. My friend Shelby, she watched the series, or this season, before I did. And she was like, in this episode, there was the funniest line ever. I'll just leave it here. It was just so funny. I also really loved at the end when Hopper was like, Jonathan, can you handle this gun? And he's like, ugh. And Nancy's like, I got this. Dustin and his pet, so, like, it gives me old Yeller vibes, but like sci-fi. At the end, Dart is between Dustin and his friends and then their escape. And because Dustin, like, if Dustin hadn't taken this pet in, they would have died, because if it had been any other Demogorgon or whatever it's called, they would have been eaten. So Dustin was good for following his instincts. Billy's haircut bothers me so much. I just want to, like, oh, I hate it. It gives me the EBGBs. Most of their haircuts, the boys' haircuts, are terrible and tragic anyways, but I just hate his haircut. Oh, the scene with Billy and Miss Wheeler, I ship it. I think that was hilarious. It was like I spit out. It was so funny. I really ship them, even though only if he's 18, obviously. But I thought that was hilarious, especially because Miss Wheeler and Mr. Wheeler are so just like not in love. The fact that she was like in her bathtub reading one of those smutty storybooks, I just thought it was so funny. Other than that scene, I hate Billy. His dad is a piece of shit and stuff, so he's kind of taking it out on people, but what kind of stepbrother or human being takes their anger out on a little girl like poor Max? Maybe they'll do what they did with Steve and they'll build on his character a little bit. I know he's the human antagonist and stuff, but I still think it's worth something to build on that a little more, to maybe have some sort of redemption for his character. Number 8, or whatever her name is, feels like a totally different genre, and it feels like spin-off series material. I don't know. I understand why they put her character in, because she wouldn't have been able, 11 wouldn't have been able to defeat the monster if she hadn't have had that advice from 8, or whatever her name is. I didn't care about any of that. Like, I cared about 11, but like, I care about 11 because I care about those boys. If you look at any dystopian book, Divergent, Hunger Games, there is a training sequence. So this episode was basically like the training sequence. So it was necessary, but I did not enjoy it. Definitely my least favorite. No shade to the actress at all. If it was worked in a little more and that character had a little more human connection to other characters, I could end up liking her. But as of now, I was like, I wanted to almost fast forward because I was like, I don't care about this. I know that 11's gonna come back. Let's get this puppy rolling. I love Hopper so much. I have so much trouble with the show because I don't know who is my favorite character and who isn't my favorite character, because they're all so amazing, but I just love Hopper. I love the fact that he went to Will's doctor appointment. I love that he looked like Indiana Jones. I love his character. I love that he's very paternal, and you see him with 11, but this is getting dark. It's taking me so long to film this. Is that a little better? Anyways, I love that you see that he is, that you get to see that he's paternal, especially because of his daughter passing that we found out the previous season. But he is his own person on top of being a good parental, or a work in progress parental figure. A list of times that I loved Hopper. when he was at Bill's doctor appointment, when he yelled at 11 and it was like, ah, they're both so headstrong and so like they're such big characters that going up against each other was a really heartwarming, fuzzy pairing, even though it was like really tense. I loved it when he danced. Anytime he ever helps Joyce, I love his character. He's amazing. I like that. I think the internet talks about how obsessed they are with his character. I think it's probably because his character is very masculine with paternal undertones and goofy. If I was Will, I would want Joyce as my mom. She's always in it. R.I.P. to her house. Her house always looks like trash, but that's fine. With this first with the like Christmas crazy lights, and then with the like shitty drawings that I don't know how anyone would be able to pair those together because they look like they'd all be a mesh to me, but okay. She's really there for her kid, and that's amazing. You know those like baby backpacks that like you strap your kids in? I would strap my teenage boy into one of those backpacks and be like, never leave me. So at the snow globe, when she's outside, I understand. That totally makes sense. You wouldn't let that kid leave your sight ever. I'm so sorry, it's so dark. I'm just gonna put a filter on top of it and hope that fixes my lighting problem. I would really like to see the relationship between Joyce and 11 build in the future. Especially if I ship Joyce and Hopper. Can they please be 11's parents? Okay, Bob. I get that I'm glad that he was happy with Joyce and that they had this like da-da-da, that they were like happy in the beginning. I think the reason Bob was expendable and you totally knew he was is because he doesn't belong in this genre. In like any romantic comedy, he's like the nice guy, the underdog, like you're like, oh my god, yes, like go Bob, you're so cute. But in this show, you need someone like Hopper who is going to, like, I know Bob like saved them in the end or whatever, but it was always Hopper who was like, okay, like take charge, go away. I was like, you go away, Bob, like exit, please. You don't know what's going on here. I was like sad for like a millisecond that he died. I'm glad they gave him an honorable death. Now Joyce and Hopper can get together. Max was a really interesting new character. I want to see her do a little more now that she's in it. Obviously you wouldn't do as much if you were a new, oh it's getting so dark. Obviously you wouldn't do as much if you were a new to the party or whatever and you didn't know what was going on. Nancy and Mike's parents are pieces of shit, but maybe that's just because I'm used to my parents who were always knew where I was, who I was with, all that stuff. Because it's a different time, I get that. But they are clueless, like the new doctor was so much better that like gave Hopper a birth certificate or adoption papers or whatever that was for 11. I think it's really important that they show that not all figures of authority are going to be literal human trash, because this to pop out, it was really cool when she just like, when she closed the gate, I was like, yeah, you go girl, and I was happy that Hopper was there to help. The song that was playing, I'll Be Watching You, that's like low-key stalker, high-key stalker song is, and then it turns upside down, and it's because the monster thing is gonna be watching you because the monster hasn't left yet. Okay, I'm going to close this out because it is so dark. Here's what I want for next year. I want Joyce and 11 to build a relationship. I want Will to be left the fuck alone. I want Mike and 11 to be adorable. I want Dustin to continue to be nerdy. I don't want that to be, even if he takes advice from Steve, I don't want that to be pounded out of him. I want him to still be really hungry for knowledge, even though it's dweeby. I want a little more for Lucas too. I want him to have, I know he's like a central character, but I want him to be more individualized. I feel like his character is so based on other people. It gets so based on Will and it's so based on Max, but I want to get a better understanding of who he is. I want to see more sci-fi. I was really impressed that even though this season was way more cinematic, they still kept that heartwarming tug, and I think it's so important that they ended with the snow globe, because at the end of the day, even though this is a sci-fi, it's about people, and what people want to be watching is stories that make them feel things, not just tons of CGI with like a loose excuse of a storyline, you know what I mean? Okay. I know this is like super bright after it was super dark for a really long time, but I just feel like I needed to close it out when it's not so dark. I re-looked at some of the footage and it's so dark, but I've been talking for 40 minutes and I have to go edit a bunch and I don't want to refilm because I'm lazy. Anyways, to close everything out, thank you so much for watching. I'm so excited for season 3 of Stranger Things. If you want to talk about Stranger Things with me in the comments, I will reply because I just want to talk about it more and more and more because it's so precious and interesting and unique and all this, you know. I'm gonna stop. If you want more, I would highly recommend going and reading the screenplay for this show. Brilliant. It is brilliant. If you want to learn how to steal their tricks, not their content, but like how they create these worlds so well. Forgive me for the bad lighting. Thank you so much for watching. On Wednesday I'm going to be doing a book related or writing related, I'm undecided, video, and I'll be here. Subscribe.